So thank you once again. I must thank for incorporating this presentation, which I thought was important from Indian perspective, not maybe as much from French perspective, that injury, what we consider in developing world today, is the epidemic of 21st century, and how do we deal with that. And I think France has large experience in dealing with emergencies very efficiently, and we can learn from there, as was highlighted by our friend from Ministry of Health a little while ago, and triage and the emergency care. So again, greetings from New Delhi. If you look at India at a glance, it's a large country. In land mass, 7th after Australia. We have 29 states and 7 union territories, and we spend about 3% of our GDP, which of course is very less if you compare from France. And but lately, over last 15 years, there has been increased modernization of automobiles as well as the road infrastructure. And in India, unlike France, there is multiplicity of road users. There is somebody who has done a study would say that about 90 types of traffic, which includes pedestrians, which includes bicyclists, which includes motorcycle, two-wheeler, four-wheel, commercial vehicles, bullock carts, and so on and so forth, competes for the same road space. And that makes the Indian roads very vulnerable for at least pedestrians and those who are riding on a two-wheeler. Besides that, India's 60% land mass is prone for earthquakes. And as late as last night, there was an earthquake experienced in Delhi, which was a very low Richter scale. And we have witnessed some of the worst earthquake disasters not so long ago in our Western India and also in Eastern India. Besides that, India also has a huge train network, and we have witnessed some of the worst train disasters in India. And if that was not enough, we all the time witness for over more than 3 decades the terrorism and low-intensity war on India, and the bomb blast can happen anywhere at will. So we witnessed in 2013 June in our Himalayan state like Uttarakhand, what we called the Himalayan tsunami, where the flash floods actually led to a lot of property, life and cattle destruction. The latest in the region, we witnessed Nepal earthquake in 25th April 2015. And so what we are witnessing today, because of injury, tremendous human tragedy, and also loss of lives, limbs, and permanent disabilities. So the injury is the 3rd commonest cause of death in all ages. This is the WHO, and it consumes in India about 3% of our GDP, whether we want it or not, we like it or not. The magnitude of injury is largely now in developing world. 88% of this burden is in the developing world. And we can see some of the bizarre accidents. But if you look at the distribution of road traffic deaths alone, according to WHO region, the Southeast Asia region bears the brunt of road traffic deaths, which constitute almost 40% of all injuries. If we look at trauma deaths and compare with cancer and heart disease, if we look at the years of productive life lost due to injury actually exceed both put together cancer and heart disease, and which is not very difficult to imagine, because the injury is the disease of young, while cancer and heart disease happens at a later age. Similarly, that is what it shows, that years of productive life lost. If we look at traffic fatalities in developed world, they range between 6 and 15. If we look at in Europe and USA and Japan, while in India from 2005, and we saw almost 7 to 8% rise in road deaths every year until 2010, when it started showing some decline. And it has declined, but still the figures we have for 2014, where 141,000 young lives were lost on our roads, which constitute about 40% of all accidental deaths, which number is at 431,000 in 2014. So if we look at from 2002 and 2014, almost 67% rise in accidental deaths and also road deaths. And if you see the incidence of any cancer in India, none of the cancer in India have this kind of incidence. This is 30 per 100,000, this injury. And even if we take the breast cancer, which is the most common cancer in women in India, it has surpassed cervical cancer lately. The incidence ranges between 14 and 29 in various Indian states, like Gujarat has 14 per 100,000, Delhi has 30 per 100,000. Then there are railroad accidents, which are unusual. You don't see in France. We have that, and we saw some decline in 2013, but again in 2014 there was almost 100% rise in deaths due to rail and road accidents. So India actually records highest number of deaths, road deaths in the world, and it is almost one death a minute. And if we compare, say, US and India in terms of road deaths, and the probability of dying on an Indian road is very, very high. And almost all types of traffic is responsible for this road menace. So somebody has very aptly termed injury as a silent genocide, which we refuse to see and accept, because there's a dead at workplace besides road traffic fatalities, and then, as I mentioned, terrorism and low intensity war, which goes on. So according to WHO, injury was at number 9 position in 99 in terms of disability adjusted life year lost, which it is going to move to number 3 position only after cardiovascular diseases and mental health illnesses, as you also come across. And so it is going to be a huge problem. The other infectious problems are going to go down with passage of time, with the development of vaccine, the newer vector control, etc. So there has been a growing realization in India, within the government and also outside the government, but there is a huge gap which exists between what is required and what is available for injury control and prevention and also treatment. So the challenge is ahead. The federal ministry is planning to establish a large number of trauma care facilities around the country, and almost any new institution which is upcoming in the country, there is a trauma component. Trauma care facility is a strong component of all these institutions which are upcoming, and also building new level 2 and level 3 trauma centers around the country. This trauma center, which we have attached to All India Institute of Medical Sciences, came into existence 10 years ago precisely in November of 2006, where we receive almost 60,000 injured patients, new injured patients. We admit almost 15,000 and perform almost 5,000 major procedures across orthopedics, neurosurgery, trauma surgery, ICU, and we have held a large number of mass casualty incidents in this trauma center. The WHO, because of this problem, the WHO and United Nations actually resolved in 2010 a decade of action for road safety, which began in 2011 until 2020 and beyond. And it has 5 pillars. There are a number of interventions, pillar 1, pillar 2, pillar 3, pillar 4 in all pre-hospital setting, but pillar 5 actually deals with the post-crash care within the hospital. We have, through National Health Mission, have provided ambulance service in almost 18 to 20 states of India, and it is improving the pre-hospital care. Actually, this service has been initiated to actually bring the pregnant mothers to hospital for hospital delivery, to reduce child, neonatal as well as maternal mortality. And the same service is also being shared for evacuating trauma victims. So what post-crash care, we need to develop some kind of a trauma team concept. I think that is something where we would want the French Academy and the foundation, both, if they can, we can learn from your experience for efficient post-crash care, because it involves from resuscitation to rehabilitation, and there is a pre-hospital care in the form of basic emergency care for these patients, and also technician, those who go on the ambulance. For hospital preparedness, what we have developed a team concept where we have initiated advanced trauma life support courses for doctors, the nurses, and also the rural trauma team concept we are developing. So with the limited resources in our rural areas also, if people, those who are on the ground can make a decision to transfer these patients as quickly as possible for definitive care to closest appropriate facility. And then actually we need long-term rehabilitation care, which is almost practically not very well developed in most civilian setting. So in this, we need to build capacity in for the immediate care providers in pre-hospital setting as well as in hospital setting. There has to be a multi-pronged strategy to deal with that, where we have to focus on injury prevention. And as you know, in India, there is also 72% of our automobiles, our roads are two-wheelers, they are not four-wheels. So the helmet enforcement, and that is where we are working very hard to enforce the injury prevention, particularly the brain injuries, which constitute almost 30 to 40% of our injury volume, by enforcement of helmet. And that is in prevention also. We would like to learn from France how you have enforced the preventive strategies. Then research in injury is very, very small in any nation, including France, including India, including US. So we need to learn from our experience there, and also capacity build in trauma education and training, and that is where we are engaged. We are doing a collaborative project with Australia, where we have done this Australia-India Trauma System collaborative projects, and Australian Prime Minister also has attached a lot of importance to this project, which we are at the moment taking. We have more centers now in India doing this capacity building for training of doctors and nurses, and I'm sure these initiatives are helping us. We have also initiated specialized courses in emergency medicine, in trauma care, and also in critical care. There is also training of doctors coming from army, coming from paramilitary forces. We are doing public awareness programs for injury prevention and also for basic emergency care in the lay public, and also incorporating it into the school curriculum to college students, and also in community and through media. We have had some of the challenging cases of trauma, and some of those were unbelievable injuries which recovered. And so what we say that containing injury epidemic is a huge challenge for all of us, at least in developing world, emerging world, and it's a huge social responsibility. So my vision is that we create awareness about injury prevention, and that is where we would learn from our colleagues in France through this collaborative which we are undergoing, and that's why I was keen to flag this issue for the Academy and to the Foundation. I'll just finish by putting up two videos. This was a very bizarre accident on one of the Delhi roads where these two Ivory Coast nationals were driving, and they rammed into a stationary truck with some iron rods projecting out of that truck. And this driver of that vehicle got impaled by these two rods into his seat, and also it was penetrating through the seat and injured his friend sitting on the back seat. And naturally they could not be extricated on the scene, and as the good sense prevailed, the pre-hospital rescuers actually brought the car by the crane to the trauma center. And I have never seen such a rescue operation that both the patients were in the car when they were brought to trauma center, and they both were extricated at the trauma center from this car. And this car is right now at the trauma center, and so naturally the boy could not lie down, and he had bled by this time quite a lot. So he was immediately shifted to operation theatre. And the anesthesiologist had to climb on a stool to intubate him because he was a tall man and he could lie down. So he was intubated while he was all sitting. Although he was tachycardic, he was hypotensive. So basically the position was made, and thoracotomy was done, and these two rods, which each weighing 15 kilograms, they went through the middle lobe of the right lung. He was shifted to ICU. This is day 5 after the operation in ICU. He required 77 units of blood and blood products within 24 hours, and he did develop some DIC which recovered, and then he was made to walk. We thought he might lose his right limb, but that also survived with some neurological problem, which also with physiotherapy recovered. These were the two rods which we have kept as a souvenir at the trauma center. And this is the team led by these two doctors, Dr. Manish Singhal and Dr. Amit Gupta, for a team of about 30 nurses and doctors were involved in the care of this patient.
Merci beaucoup, Professeur Misra.
Thank you very much, Professor Misra,
Magnifique. Ah, vous avez encore
for
des choses à
this
nous dire.
magnificent presentation.
The national capital's leading hospital aims have removed a 10-inch long iron rod from the skull of a man who they say should have been wearing a helmet while riding his motorbike. Shalini gets you more.
Doctors at New Delhi's AIIMS Trauma Center have just moved a 10-inch long iron rod from Bhuvneshwar Singh's skull. The 30-year is more than lucky to have survived a near-fatal accident. He fell off his motorcycle onto a roadside railing in Mathura.
Yes, he was extremely lucky in the sense that even a millimeter shift of the change in the angle of the rod when it was going inside the skull and the spinal cord, even a millimeter change would have resulted in a catastrophe, even cardiac arrest at the site of the accident.
While half an inch of the rod was visible, CT scans revealed it had penetrated right through the middle of his eyes, through his nose and throat till the base of his skull, breaking 2 cervical vertebrae.
And actually this is the vertebra which is fractured while hanging. Someone, when you have the death sentence and hanging is done, that's how somebody dies actually.
Brought to AIIMS almost 10 hours after the accident, a team of 15 doctors and paramedics took over 11 hours to remove the rod. First, an incision was made in the mouth to allow access to the rod inside the skull. Next, some of the bones were drilled to make space for the rod to move. Once loosened, the rod was then slowly pulled out from the outside, millimeter by painstaking millimeter. The smallest error in the angle could have led to paralysis, bleeding of the brain vessels, even cardiac arrest. Surgeons also fixed the 2 broken bones at the neck to stabilize the spine, but Singh is still in the ICU.
This is the 10-inch long iron rod that pierced through Bhuvneshwar's skull. It's 3/4 of an inch thick and it's a pure medical miracle that he survived. But he would have been spared of this trauma if only he was wearing a helmet to protect himself. This case must serve as a cautionary example for others. In New Delhi, Shalini.
Thank you all very much for your attention.